The Untold Story of Walt Disney's Two Children, a Man, a Legacy. Walter Disney built more than cartoons. He crafted a kingdom of innocence. His name became synonymous with childlike wonder, dreams brought to life, and the spectacle of fantasy turned into tangible form. But behind that glittering facade lay his real kingdom, his family. In 1925, Walt married Lillian Bounds, a studio ink artist whose calm sensibility balanced his ambitious fervor. Their marriage was full of the usual contradictions of two strong personalities navigating celebrity, creative obsession, and the birth of a cultural phenomenon. For years, they tried to have children, and with each unsuccessful attempt, the desire deepened into quiet heartbreak. Then, in 1933, they welcomed their first daughter, Diane Marie Disney. A little over 2 years later, in 1936, they adopted a second daughter, Sharon May Disney. Walt Disney, a man whose name would soon preside over kingdoms of imagination, approached fatherhood with the same mix of control and creativity that defined his work. He adored his daughters, but was not always emotionally available. Like many men of his generation, he expressed love through structure, security, and legacy. He filmed their birthdays, built them dollhouses, and even tested theme park ideas on them. But he was often consumed by the scale of his empire. The girls, while loved, lived in the orbit of something far bigger than any child could fully understand. And yet, they bore his name, grew in his shadow. And when he passed in 1966, they inherited not just his wealth or renown, but his paradoxes. Visionary brilliance married to emotional distance, public affection entwined with private silence. Diane and Sharon Disney lived vastly different lives, shaped both by Walt's presence and his absence. Their lives were not fables. They were not characters in a storybook. They were women navigating identity in the wake of mythology. Their choices were shaped by wealth, yes, but also expectation, loss, and the deep human yearning to matter beyond someone else's legend. This is their story. Diane Marie Disney. They named her Diane Marie. Born in December 1933, in the warm glow of a Los Angeles winter. Her birth marked a quiet triumph for Walt and Lillian after years of trying to conceive. From her earliest days, Diane's life was archived. Birthday parties on film, snapshots in garden settings, letters written in the precise script of 1930s correspondence. But even then, attention hovered. She was the firstborn of a man becoming a myth. As Diane grew, she became increasingly aware of the uniqueness of her circumstances. Her father wasn't just a parent. He was a cultural architect, constantly building new worlds. Disneyland was more than an amusement park. It was her father's tangible dream.
At home, he was thoughtful, but not overly expressive. He worked tirelessly, often late into the night. Their bond was real, but structured. Her mother, Lillian, provided warmth and daily presence. Diane, for her part, navigated her father's empire with quiet grace.
She was bright, with a curiosity that matched her father's in spirit, if not in scale. She developed a love for the arts and humanities. After high school, she enrolled at USC but eventually transferred to Sarah Lawrence College in New York, a liberal arts school known for its emphasis on individuality and creativity. There, Diane found her voice. She was no longer simply Walt's daughter. She was a young woman with her own opinions, her own dreams. In 1954, Diane married Ron W. Miller, a football player at USC who would later become a significant figure at the Disney Company. Together, they had 7 children, 5 biological and 2 adopted. While Ron rose through the ranks of the Disney organization, eventually becoming CEO, Diane maintained a more private life. She was not interested in corporate politics. Her passion lay in philanthropy, education, and the arts. Despite her avoidance of the spotlight, Diane became an essential custodian of her father's legacy. She helped establish the Walt Disney Family Foundation and spearheaded the creation of the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco. The museum was her love letter to her father, complex, nuanced, and deeply personal. It offered a portrait of Walt that the public seldom saw, the man who sketched ideas at the breakfast table, who loved trains, who had quiet regrets. Diane's marriage ended in divorce in 1984. She never remarried. In her later years, she focused on cultural and environmental causes, particularly in Northern California. She continued to give interviews, though always on her terms. Always protective of the man she both admired and sometimes misunderstood. Diagnosed with breast cancer in the early 2010s, Diane Diane faced her illness with characteristic resolve. She died in November 2013 at the age of 79. Her passing marked the end of a chapter for those who still remembered Walt as more than a brand. She was, in many ways, the last direct bridge to the man behind the mouse. Her legacy lives on through her children, her writing, and the museum that bears her vision. Mae Disney. Born in February 1936, Sharon Mae Disney came into the world through adoption, joining the Disney household at just 13 months old. Unlike Diane, who bore Walt's features and temperament, Sharon was a quieter child, sensitive, introspective, and observant. Her arrival brought new energy into the family, but also a different set of dynamics. Diane, nearly 3 years older, was already forming her place in the family orbit. Sharon had to find her own path. From a young age, Sharon was aware that she was adopted, though it was never a subject of shame or secrecy. Walt and Lillian were open about it, careful to make her feel fully part of the family. But the knowledge lingered, like a soft shadow. She struggled at times with identity and belonging. She loved her father deeply, but was more timid in his presence. While Diane might have asked questions or challenged ideas, Sharon often observed in silence. As she grew older, she found solace in animals. Horses, in particular, became her passion. She spent long afternoons at local stables, riding through California hills, brushing manes with quiet devotion. Animals didn't ask questions. They didn't expect her to live up to any legacy. They simply accepted her presence. In 1956, at the age of 20, Sharon married Robert Brown, a man outside the entertainment industry. Their marriage was modest, removed from the Hollywood machinery. They had one biological daughter, Victoria, and adopted another, also named Sharon. But the marriage proved fragile and eventually ended in divorce. Sharon later remarried, this time to William Harrah, a hotel magnate and car collector. Her life briefly dipped into the glamour of Reno and Las Vegas, yet she remained grounded. Sharon had no desire to be a socialite. She was private, almost reclusive at times, and when Harrah passed away in 1978, Sharon retreated even further into a life of quietude and conservation. Her true calling emerged in environmental advocacy. Sharon purchased large parcels of land along California's central coast, transforming them into wildlife sanctuaries. She funded educational programs on environmental stewardship and supported legislation protecting endangered species. She wasn't interested in boardrooms or brand extensions. Her legacy would be measured in green fields and thriving habitats. In her final years, Sharon battled cancer. She refused excessive media attention and declined most interviews. Her death on February 16, 1993 was noted in obituaries but not widely publicized. She was 57 years old. Her ashes were scattered on the land she loved. Sharon never wanted the spotlight. She wanted authenticity. In a world that saw her as a Disney princess by birth, she chose instead to become a steward of earth and silence. Her life was quieter than Diane's, but no less meaningful. She left behind 2 daughters, a network of preserved lands, and a philosophy of gentle resistance to spectacle. Legacy beyond the empire. Walt Disney's daughters never held executive titles or appeared on annual reports. They didn't want to. Their inheritance wasn't just financial, it was symbolic. Diane and Sharon each forged paths that echoed their father's values while resisting his scale. Diane channeled Walt's visionary spirit into legacy preservation. She gave structure to memory, founded museums, and raised children who would carry the family name with quiet dignity. Sharon took another route entirely, finding sanctuary in nature, building literal spaces of refuge far from flashing lights and consumer cues. Both daughters lived in contrast to their father's public image. Where Walt expanded outward, they folded inward. Where he built spectacle, they sought substance, and in doing so, they preserved something fragile and beautiful, the human side of a myth. To be Walt Disney's child was to inherit wonder and burden alike. Diane and Sharon did not escape the shadow. They redefined it, not through cartoons or kingdoms, but through conservation, education, and devotion to something quieter. Their lives remind us that legacy isn't only what you build, it's also what you protect, what you choose to leave untouched, what you love without needing to show it to the world. In remembering Diane and Sharon Disney, we glimpse the quieter echoes of a name that changed the world. Their stories invite us to look past the parades and into the lives lived behind the legacy. If this story moved you, explore more untold chapters of Hollywood's hidden families by subscribing to the channel. And the next time you see a castle or a mouse, remember the daughters who walk the garden paths outside the spotlight.